Hi guys, welcome to our very first interactive conversation. Maybe we can start off by just introducing ourselves so that people have a sense of who we are, and then we can take it from there.
Hi guys, my name is Caesar and I'm based in Cape Town. I'm doing my internship here this year. I did my M1 last year.
Okay, nice to meet you, Caesar. Welcome.
Guys, I am Lungelo, also based in Cape Town, completed my master's here in Cape Town as well.
Welcome, Lungelo. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Anati. I am based in Pretoria and I completed my M1 in Cape Town.
Okay, hi, Anati. These are lovely interns, and today we're just gonna hear from them. How are you guys doing?
That's a difficult one. Some days are good and some days aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think today is a good day.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, especially considering we are here. We don't want you on a bad day, but that sounds just about right.
Well, I think Anati pretty much summed it up. Some days are good, some days are bad, but I think it's all about self-preservation and just finding your sweet spot.
Today I'm actually good. I think in the past couple of weeks I've been good in the current rotation. I guess I'm looking forward to the following rotation. I had my down moments, but right now I'm in a better space. In fact, I want to say I'm in a good space.
Well, I'm actually glad I caught you guys on a good day, because literally internship is an emotional turmoil. So the fact that 3 out of 3 people are actually good is a good sign. Wondering, how would you guys describe your internship? What 3 words would you use to just sum up the whole experience you've had so far?
You know, when I answered your previous question, I said I'm in a good space because I feel that way. It's been such a horrible journey. It's been such an anxiety provoking journey. And I think punitive, I think sum it all for me. But that happened in the first 2 months. The second and the third, which is now, I feel good. I think it was an adaptation just from being a student. You know, I think there's a huge gap. I wasn't ready at all with what I found. I wasn't mentally ready. I think I struggled a lot with the culture where I was. It felt like I needed to be perfect in all angles.
I think that description of what you've experienced, honestly, that's what the whole experience of studying psychology. And I think it's quite important for us to be able to reflect on how difficult it is, because I feel like a lot of people have quite a romanticized idea. And I think it's even more difficult for you guys, especially considering that last year there was lockdown and impacted your training. So I can only imagine how much more difficult it must be for you guys.
I think for me, describing my experience currently in 3 words would include overwhelming, disorientating, and really anxiety provoking. I think I came into my first rotation not really knowing what to expect, and I wasn't sure what was expected of me. I think just owning up to the anxiety and just speaking to my supervisor and, letting her know this is what's going on for me really helped kind of like dissipate the anxiety for me. But on other days, I just really have to forgive myself for not being my best, because it's really tough being an intern.
It's like that sense of isolation when you are the only psych intern in whatever rotation you're in, makes it a whole lot difficult, because you don't have anyone to bounce off and actually have a soundboard to see whether or not this is a shared experience. Am I alone? Are you also having the same experience? That just makes it so much more harder when you're alone in that rotation.
Yeah, if I were to sum it up in like 3 words, I'd say it was fulfilling, but it was also anxiety provoking and depressing to some extent. Seeing patients and being able to help them is the most fulfilling thing for me. The difference that you can have that you can make in people's lives and how much people are in need of the service. But it's also very anxiety provoking because the workload is a lot, which is something that took me quite a while to adjust to and get the hang of. Adjusting to the work environment where there's like different personalities and there are clashes in personalities, and you're still trying to get a hang of this workload, that it just felt very depressing. But also servicing people who are in need, and you're in a low resourced country and in a low resourced hospital where there aren't as many interns as you would like, especially in terms of ones that speak African languages. That to some extent it was also depressing to find that the environment is not what you thought it would be.
And I think that the incongruence between what your expectations are and the reality of what you get is something that I also had to grapple with. And based on what you guys have said, I think the things that stood out for me is, number one, that the experience is quite anxiety provoking. And that's completely understandable because you're coming from a new space and you're coming into a new space that you have no idea of what it will look like. Also, just the kind of work that we do, it's quite hard because there's no sense of certainty of, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? And you don't really know where you stand. But also, I guess, in relation to what Usiza and Lungelo also spoke about, is that sense of wanting to be perfect and do things perfectly. And having to do that in a space that's already pressured and there's no space for you to actually try to figure out what that perfect even means. What I quickly learned when I got to internship is that there's no such thing as being perfect. You can only do the best that you can, and you'll never get everything right. I guess there's some consolation in that. But I guess while we speaking about like some of the challenges that we're experiencing, like what would you say has been the most challenging thing about your experience as an intern?
I think for me it would be adjusting to the different personalities. And like for me, there's a sense of feeling like I belong in the field. There's a number of times been like instances where I feel like the type of person I am, I'm quite loud, I'm quite assertive, feeling like that is not acceptable in the field. And on many instances, I have felt like I'm being rejected. And that's been like my biggest challenge, to tone myself down to from like a 10 to like a 3. It's not even like from a 10 to like a 7. It feels like I have to be a completely different person to feel like I'm accepted, or maintaining your uniqueness while also feeling like you're accepted by people who are already in the field.
What you're saying, Anati, is probably one of the most painful things about psychology. And I say that because not only in relation to the experience you've had, but also like the journey of becoming a psychologist and the fact that it's about you, the kind of person you are, how you relate to people, and the traditional idea of what a psychologist is supposed to look like, how they're supposed to sound like. And at times, even supervisors expecting you to sort of mimic who they are, and not really having the space to be yourself. That's really something that we need to think about, not only for ourselves, but for people that come after us as well. So I don't feel safe enough to be myself in that space. Then what am I trying to do with patients?
It's quite painful to feel like you have to change yourself in order to feel accepted, or constantly feels like you have to fit into this box and there's no room for difference.
And I guess there's a fine line between trying to develop your professional identity and I guess completely ostracizing who you are as a person. because who you are is what allows you to connect with people, which is what we try to do as psychologists. Being able to connect to people, understanding who they are and their authentic selves, and giving them the space to feel free enough to be those people. And yet, it feels like it's quite challenging for us to do the same.
I think for me, what's been the most challenging about internship is just the feeling of isolation and everything that kind of like comes with that, you know, the depression, kind of like, you know, the negative self-talk, doubting yourself, and all that really comes with, you know, I really struggled to adapt fast enough, I think, to the work, and that kind of like really sent me in like spiraling into like a depression. My anxiety was peaking, but it's because I just didn't know what was expected of me because I was so isolated. Because the nature of our work, it's not kind of like the work you can go home and speak to somebody about because of how confidential it is. And also what was difficult for me is that all my friends who were in Cape Town last year left Cape Town. And in a way, I, you know, kind of like was alone.
And I completely understand what you're saying. I guess it's not only in relation to the work in the sense that we can't speak about it, but especially in internship and masters, like there's so much that's going on. You literally do not have time for people. And without you having someone there in the same rotation as you, makes it even harder.
And then you just kind of like have personal things going on for you, and then, you know, life is not going according to plan, and things start to unravel in your professional kind of like space because of what's happening, and your personal life because of things you can't control. I think for me, I lost my grandmother, you know, very recently, and that's been really, really difficult for me. But at the same time, I really need to be kind of like keeping it together and, you know, doing the best that I can in my internship, but at the same time finding space to deal with my loss and personal issues as well.
Firstly, I'm sorry to hear about your grand.
Thank you.
I think that's something that's quite difficult, not being in a good space, and yet you have to be present for the people that you see and be able to hold them when you yourself feel quite uncontained.
I agree with Ulungelo. Having moved away from my friends and feeling quite isolated, and having to navigate a new city while also working full time, and with how demanding the job is, has been difficult.
And I guess also the instability that comes with the training itself. With masters, you don't know where you're going to get in. Internship, the same thing as well. Then there's ComServe, you're constantly being moved around. The minute you become stable and you have like a support system, that seems to be broken apart. Sure. And Lisa?
My first time being introduced into a group of psychologists. So where I did my M1. So I think I had a different view about psychologists. You know, I think it was someone who's good, who's supportive, who's caring, who can hold you, who can contain you, whom you can be vulnerable with. Unfortunately, I couldn't get that space. I couldn't get that holding environment. And it was a shock for me because I remember one time when my supervisor said to me, you really need to be anxious. I think I nearly fell off the chair. I couldn't understand. What do you mean? Do you mean I need to be anxious? For me, it was, I couldn't relate that. I couldn't make sense of that. So, but yeah, I spoke about it, and I spoke to her about my discomfort, my vulnerabilities, and thanks God, she was able to handle it. I opened up about my fears, about my struggles, and she reflected on it. The following week, we were able to start on a good page, and the relationship is amazing now.
Yeah, it seems like
Yeah.
having open communication with her was quite helpful. But in relation to what you're saying, Caesar, I think it's a very common thing for us to have this perception of what psychologists are like, and you expect them to be therapists, even like in their own personal and professional lives. And the reality of it is that we humans, yes, we have the training. Yes, we taught how to be present, and how to engage with our patients. But also something that I also found lacking when I was in internship is the fact that we don't take care of each other's mental health, and mental well-being as we do our patients. Engagements we have with each other as mental health professionals are not therapeutic at times, and at times not containing. And I think you feel it more when you're an intern. But with that being said, it's not always doom and gloom in the profession. And I think we've spoken quite a lot about things that aren't too great. So maybe we can hear a bit about things that you actually enjoy. Like, what do you love about the profession? Because clearly there's something that's keeping you here, keeping all of us here, even with everything that's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't wait to talk about that because in as much as everything that I've said was a challenge and this and that, but I think what kept me going was the fact that I was enjoying. I mean, I'm truly, I enjoyed what I'm doing. You know, each and every day, I love what I do. I could actually see the DSM coming to life. And that for me was exciting. I would be excited just seeing these personalities, these diagnoses live. You know, I've heard so much theory sometimes, and each time I see my patients, it's just precious. I love it. I love my job.
I think for me, it's just the fulfillment you get at the end once you're able to discharge a patient. So I work in a general hospital, and the people that we see in my ward are people who have like medical conditions, and then they develop like comorbid psychiatric conditions like depression, anxiety. They come in really, really ill medically, and they come in unwell psychologically. And then, there's a lot of input like psychiatrically to get them to a point that they can be discharged at 8 weeks. So just watching the transition from when they come in to the day you discharge them is just so fulfilling and so rewarding. Just the relationships that you're able to build with those people when they're in the ward. It's really amazing. But beyond that, also just the relationships with the colleagues that I have now that I've settled into the ward. The nursing staff is amazing. The consultant is, oh my word, I've learned so much from her. Sometimes it's like, I just want to touch the hem of my consultant, like that person in the Bible.
So literally, like I'm here for that.
Like, just a tenth of how amazing she is. The principal psychologist has been so great at containing me and supporting me. It's really been amazing. And the registrar, when she finally came, was just like so amazing. She's just so on it. And that inspired me to be on the ball as well.
Therapy works, guys. Like
basically, I'm pretty much the same as Ulungelo. Like, it's fulfilling for me to see someone get better and you see them improve in some way. And you hear from people who have been there for a lot longer that like you've made quite a big improvement on this person, even if it's not a difference in them, their functioning improving. But sometimes it's just being there and meeting people, getting their stories. I think I'm quite curious about people, so it's very interesting for me to just go talk to different patients and hear what their story is. I think I was fortunate enough to be at a placement where there's a lot of interns. So there's 10 of us, and it's very nice. It reminds me of what we had in masters last year, because we're all very supportive of each other.
That's so true. I think the position we in as therapists and having people trust us with their lives, with their experiences, like that's a privilege. And that is very, very humbling. And it's really not something that I take lightly. So being involved in someone's therapeutic process, that's incredible. And having someone trust you and seeing them work through these things is something like I literally have no words to explain it. But yeah, like I also love what I do. Like it excites me. Just thinking about going to work and seeing people and just being curious. And I think that's something that's quite important, remaining curious. And wanting to learn and understand people and being okay with not understanding at times and being able to say that. Like, how's that transition been for you? Like going from school to work, because internship is work, essentially.
I think for me, like the big wake up call is that time is of the essence, essentially. I think last year in M1, we used to do a 9 to 3. I mean, yeah, a 9 to 3. And then, you had so much free time to do everything else. You went to the gym, you could go to the beach and, do all these nice things for self-preservation. Now it's like 8 to 4. And then you kind of like have like after hours clinics as well. And then you have to come back, you have to cook, and then you still have to work till very late in the evening. But you still want to do things that you once loved before. You still want to go on your walks. You still want to go to the gym. You still have to run errands because you're still leading a life beyond your work. And I found that managing time sometimes can be difficult because you're just so tired all the time because you're always chasing the next deadline. And rest is very important.
To figure out when to fit in everything is quite important. And also remembering to take care of yourself.
I have to think about, can I go to the gym right now? Do I have enough time to go to the gym? And then when you do eventually make time to go to the gym, you're literally working out but also stressing over the next report that you need to write.
The transition for me was different. I struggled with adapting. But also for me, I've worked before for different institutions. This is the first time I'm working for a health sector. And one thing that stands out, I mean, over maybe 10 years experience of work in different industries, I've never been this busy ever in my entire work experience. I have never experienced being this busy. It feels like you really need to do this and at someone else's pace. So I felt like I'm extremely independent, and I think it frustrates me. I can't wait to get off it.
I can completely relate to what you're saying. But speaking about time management, we are running out of time. So quickly, let's hear it. How do you guys manage with work-life balance?
Like I didn't mention, normally when I introduce myself, the first line is, I'm a mother of a 5-year-old daughter. So yes, let me reintroduce myself. I'm a mother of a 5-year-old daughter. So those who know, they know what it means to be actually a single mother of a 5-year-old daughter. It means you need to be taking care of that, and not drop them. I mean, being in this industry as well, being cognizant of what it means to rob, the opportunity and the engagement with the child. I think I become very worried about that too. That said, I am a planner of note. I think I'm forced to be a planner. If I say 5 minutes for me, it means an hour. If we say we meet at 5, it has to be 5 o'clock. And I've learned to become selfish with my time because I cannot do otherwise. Weekends, I know that they are for my daughter. I don't compromise on that. That's how I plan my time. Weekends are for myself, for doing my activities, for my gym, for my exercise, activities, what I like. And I make sure that I also fit the time for my daughter and her activities.
I think it's important to know the value of your time, especially this year.
I think initially I was going into with the mentality that, you know what, I want to do the best that I can in an internship. So it'll be just work, 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 work. And I found that it depleted me very quickly. Like within weeks, I was depleted. And I really had to take a step back and be like, okay, so there's a time for work. There's a time for rest. There's a time for me. And then there's a time to socialize. I also have supper club, like once a month, where like I host my friends and we come and we cook, we meet, and we just chat. So balancing with things that I like with work has been quite easy for me.
And that's true. You never have time, but you make time for the things that are important for you. Considering that we are mental health practitioners, I'm wondering what impact the work has had on your mental health.
I think it's a great test of mental health. I mean, it's very important to have a therapist. I cannot stress that enough. If to have your own therapy process is very important, because you take home some of the things you hear. It's very important to have a support structure, to have your own therapy process and do things that will just help you in maintaining your mental health. I think for all of us, working out and gymming is quite important. And it really, for me personally, it helps a lot in maintaining my mental health.
Physical activity and mental health, they go together. And just having a support system and therapy, guys, like go.
I think the university I went to, I think we're very fortunate that they insisted that we be in our own personal therapy once we, training to become psychologists. So when I transitioned into internship, I had already kind of like an established relationship with somebody, and somebody who's not too old themselves and kind of like knows what goes on in internship, so they understand when I bring things to them. Also supervision, like my supervisors are just amazing people, and they become really great containers for me, as well as support from friends. Most of my friends are kind of like in this profession, so it like we can bounce ideas off of each other.
Just to round off, I just wanted to hear from you guys. What advice would you give someone that is on their journey to pursuing this career or is interested in pursuing this career?
When I was doing my first year of my master's, I was mentally ready for my second year, in as much as I think they emphasize the fact that it is high volumes, it is pressured, so I was mentally ready, and I don't think I was mentally ready for this. And I do think there aren't enough voices that are actually speaking about this, that this is at least something that one needs to expect. But it is rewarding. It is worth doing. It's just one of those roads that are worth walking or taking in life. Personally, for my personal development, I think it has just been an amazing journey.
The fact that I feel like it's psychology is perceived as like such a sacred society, and no one knows what goes on. Like hush, hush, like don't say anything. And it literally gives people like this romanticized idea of what things are like, and yet it's something that you need to know. It's not meant to scare you, but you need to mentally prepare yourself that it's not going to be easy.
I think for me, the biggest thing is being gentle with yourself and just really having patience for the process. I think a lot of people get into first year and it's big groups in universities of like close to 1,000 people. And then you get to honors, they only take 100 or less. And then you get to masters, they take like 6. Sometimes you apply for masters and you won't be able to get in, but that doesn't mean you won't become a psychologist. They're just saying to you, not right now. So you can use the time to kind of like further your skills, develop your skills in counseling, and do other things if you can, just so that when you come back for the interviews again, you can be that much stronger. I got in on my second try, and I used the year that I had after honors to kind of like, better myself. I did a lot of introspection, I spoke to a therapist, and I really just tried to better myself so that I was in a position where when I came back the following year, I had 4 offers from all the universities that I got to, and then I got to reject all the universities that rejected me the previous year. But really, but really, I think you really need to be patient with the process. It's not really going to be a one-hit wonder. It's a very long and windy road. So be gentle with yourself and be very patient with the process. But you have what it takes.
I know. I completely agree with Lungelo about being kind to yourself and being gentle to yourself. I mean, I think in pursuing this career, there will be a lot of like feeling like you doubt yourself. There'll be a lot of feelings of low self-worth to some extent, and feeling like you're not good enough. And it's really not a never, it's a not now, as Lungelo said. It's about really remaining true to yourself as well, and making sure that you develop yourself and work on what you already have. Don't try to mimic someone else or try to be someone else.
That's so true. And I think especially with like interviews and stuff, they can see right through you if you don't really know what your business is. Thank you so, so very much for just taking the time to talk to us. Just hearing your experiences has been really amazing and eye-opening. And I do believe that it will be something that's beneficial for quite a lot of people, both in the profession and outside of it. But without wasting any more time in the time management zone, I've been horrible at managing time, but that's okay. But thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you guys qualified and doing your own thing out there. Thank you so much,
Sure.
guys.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.